We are very happy to be joined by Will Poulter. Thanks for joining us. How are you? How's everything going?
Hey, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, gents. I'm good. Thank you. I'm doing well.
We got a bunch of stuff to talk about. Well, let's start off with Dopesick miniseries focused on the epicenter of America's struggle with opioid addiction. Heavy topic, a lot of great names, this including yourself. Release is October 13th on Hulu. But as I just said, we'll dive into it off the top. It's pretty heavy subject matter. And like, how do you, and that's not something new for you. You've been in some heavy roles. You played some heavy characters, like with reference Detroit, for example. So this is not like a new thing for you, but what is the key off the top to finding that kind of finesse with a project like this? Because it isn't an easy thing to talk about, but it's an important thing to deliver.
Right. Well, yeah, man. I mean, I feel very lucky, anytime as an actor, you get to be a part of something with a social application like this, something that seeks to kind of contribute to a conversation around social injustice, or some kind of societal ills. And I think Dopesick absolutely ticks that box, and it's very, very necessary that, as much as possible, the show can contribute to the growing awareness, I think, of the opioid epidemic, which has kind of been, I guess, slightly overshadowed naturally by the current pandemic that we find ourselves in. But unfortunately, the statistics don't lie and they don't paint a pretty picture. 40% of all prescriptions still relate to opioids. 70% of the drug overdoses that we see are associated with opioids. Every 15 minutes, a child is born with withdrawal symptoms to opioids. So this is a very real and present problem. And so the show couldn't really kind of be made or couldn't be coming out kind of quick enough. And it won't, solve the issue single-handedly, of course, but hopefully it will, as I say, contribute to that growing awareness and get people moving to action.
Yeah. And that's, I think, again, relating back to other roles you have, like preparing for something like that, like how different is that mindset? You've done big blockbuster franchises. You've done pure comedies. Like for you to dive into a role like this that is important, is there a different prep for you, or is it all kind of the same thing that just leads into immersing yourself once on set?
I guess first and foremost, you want to kind of service the sort of character as authentically as possible, and for me, a great deal of the heavy lifting has been done, near all of it, by Danny Strong, our writer, and all the people contributing to this project. I think as long as I kind of tried to play Billy as authentically as possible, the rest was going to be taken care of. But certainly, when you do something like this, and as was the case with Detroit, it comes with a kind of a real educational opportunity as well, where I think I'm given an opportunity to learn about things that I feel like I ought to have learned about, as part of the educational system, and didn't necessarily for varying reasons. The epidemic around OxyContin, I think, is certainly an issue that is relatively unique to America, and it's not the only place where opioids have affected people in a negative way, but certainly it seems to be worse there than anywhere else. And as a Brit, there was a lot that I had to learn, and I was really grateful to learn about it, but shocked and really disturbed, along the way, to see what a kind of methodical and sort of purpose-filled effort this was from a single corporation and a family to, make money by all costs, and knowingly promote something in a fraudulent way that was highly addictive, that was highly dangerous, and sort of repackage it as something that is safe and was going to revolutionize pain across the country. That kind of widespread corporate level of deceit is really quite frightening to reckon with.
I know that we talk about it a lot on our podcast, just how media in general, and especially movies, TV, they don't usually tackle addiction, especially not in, I would say, with any degree of authenticity. It's usually very hollow. It's usually like, but recently there's been a lot of great programs, a lot of great movies that have done a great job tackling it. But just in general, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of people maybe not brave enough or maybe not willing to just tackle addiction in the first place. Why do you think that is, that not many people just want to do that?
It's a really good question. I'm not sure I know the definitive answer. I will say that one of the things that I appreciate about this show, as far as, its depiction of addiction, is that it seeks to kind of course correct the narrative around who the villains are. I think all too often we see addiction being something that people who are sort of, for whatever reason, kind of depicted as sort of being like morally deficient in some way, succumb to the lure of addiction. And I think something that this show does very well is it shows that actually the people with the moral deficiencies are the people in the positions of power, who are running these corporations, these sort of wealthy elite. And actually, the people who are the victims in this case are the people who are made the victims of opioid addiction. And they are hardworking, honest people seeking pain relief, and they're taken advantage of. And so, I think one of the reasons maybe that other TV shows and films haven't necessarily wrestled with that idea is because this idea of addicts being kind of synonymous with being bad or morally deficient is so deep rooted in our minds, and it's reinforced by a lot of a lot of media. And my hope for this show is that it extends to people kind of, or translates to people being a bit more empathetic towards the struggle that people face with addiction.
I love that you mentioned that, because, listeners of our podcast know, like, I grew up with addiction in my household. So whenever I watch a program or anything that depicts it, I always watch it with a more like critical eye. And anytime I hear that, like, a project is going to be focused more on that and destigmatizing, the reality around addiction, and the fact that, like you're saying, the morally bankrupt people are the ones that are profiting off this, and the people who are with moral issues are maybe the ones that are enforcing this stigma by saying addicts are bad people or morally bad. Those are actually the ones in trouble. I love that you said that. And also, I like how you mentioned before, Danny Strong. He's at the wheel of this entire series. And for those of you maybe not familiar with the name, he's producer and writer for Empire. He wrote 2 of the Hunger Games movies. What did he bring to this series that maybe brought it to another level compared to something else you would have worked on?
Yeah, very good point, man. I'm glad you brought Danny up, because the dude's so talented, and I think a perfect example is someone who kind of, uses his pen to its maximum potential as far as making shows that are not only kind of entertaining and, unquestionably sort of humane and psychologically rich, but also have a really kind of important social application, and often really turn people on to socio-political activity that they might not necessarily even be aware of, or might be looking to kind of like, better their understanding around. Danny does that so well. And I think, I was very lucky to have kind of early conversations with him, before we started up, about the character, about the subject matter. He was a fountain of knowledge. And between the book that Beth Macy wrote and, the conversations with Danny, I kind of went in feeling like as well prepped as I possibly could,
And not just Danny Strong either. Barry Levinson involved, directed the first episode, I know. And then some of the names, we mentioned it off the top: Michael Keaton, Peter Sarsgaard, Michael Stolberg, Caitlin Dever, Rosario Dawson. What is it like? I mean, that's quite the ensemble right there. Like,
team.
Is it ensemble cast ever for you? And this, again, you're not new to this at this point, but like early on, whether something like We're the Millers, which it's not a massive, but there's some big names there. Do nerves ever creep just like, wow, this is a lot of people I'm acting with, or maybe up against in certain scenes? Is that ever you ever have to tackle that differently when it's such a cast with so many names?
It's a good point. Like, I won't lie to you. There's a part of me that's like suppressing the fanboy, for sure. And anytime I've been around people like Michael Keaton, unfortunately I didn't get to do any scenes with Rosario Dawson, but like, the second time I've worked with Caitlin Dever, I think she's one of the best actors out. Anytime you're around those people, the interesting thing is that more often than not, they're so good, and what they do makes the scene and your involvement feel so much more real and authentic that it kind of strips away at any kind of like consciousness you might have around like who they are outside of the character. So they kind of like do a lot of the work for you. And I can certainly say that about Michael. My scenes with Michael Keaton, I mean, the guy is so good that you just sort of forget who he is. He is Dr. Phoenix in those moments. And really your job just becomes about kind of like, just kind of bouncing off whatever he's giving and reacting, as opposed to having to do any real work. So I loved that. And it just helps as well, obviously, that he's such a nice guy, and he was so supportive and kind of nurturing of me as well, which I really appreciated. And yeah, the Dr. Phoenix Billy relationship is kind of very, very pivotal to, I think, Billy's journey over the course of the series. So I loved our scenes together.
I love that you say starstruck. I feel like that just, I mean, he's Batman. Like, it doesn't really go away. It's like,
yeah, I'm not going to do that. I can't get rid of that entirely. I'm going to try, but yeah.
You ever, like, even in those, you talked about like going into it and like how that works, even, stripping away, because like someone like Michael Keaton, like you forget that's who he is in the performance. But do you ever, like, I don't want to say stand out. It's not like you're competing. It's like, it's not like you're playing a one-on-one sport here, but like, do you ever have to maybe like tone it down, bring it up a little, because you have to match something of someone else, or do you want it to stand out more? Or like, does that thought process ever come into your head too, when you work with someone of like that stature, for example?
No, I mean, I guess, I mean, genuinely, like when someone like Michael's opposite you, the things that would ordinarily like bring you out of role or make you feel kind of less in it, for want of a sort of less kind of like, or a more kind of like accurate way of describing it, the things that make you feel kind of less in it sort of start to fall away because your focus is drawn to the person in front of you. Their performance is so kind of magnetic and it feels so real that, yeah, camera consciousness or whatever else kind of falls away, and you start to think less about yourself, which is positive, which is in your best interest. You think less about your performance, and so you kind of find yourself doing less and just reacting. And if you can do that and get in that kind of relaxed state and just trust that as the process, then I think you're kind of better for it. But yeah, man, it was so fun. I mean, we had scenes, that ran for 5-6 minutes in a single shot, and sometimes we'd be left to kind of improvise a little bit at the end. Like, that's the stuff that dreams are made of. I love that opportunity. Need to get to do that with someone like Michael is like, it's crazy. So yeah, a real privilege to get to do that.
I like that you mentioned that, because we always ask anyone who's been in, TV and movies, just what they prefer more structurally, just doing movies or TV, because with a TV show or miniseries or anything like that, you get obviously way more time to, delve into your character, get into it, like express so much more of their story versus a movie. But in a movie, sometimes it's maybe easier because you shoot for however many months, however many weeks, and then you're just done and you get to move on. But with the series, sometimes you have to keep coming back. You just don't know where it's going to go. So what would you say you prefer as an actor for TV versus movies?
I did enjoy the fact that over a course of a TV series, I was able to explore like more of an arc, and without giving like too much away, you see the character really kind of like mature and develop quite a lot. So yeah, I mean, most films have been over a kind of shorter period of time, and there's less to play with. And sometimes, even as exhausting as like some film shoots are, I kind of leave feeling like, there's like, it doesn't feel like the job's totally done always. Whereas there is a kind of finality and a sense of like conclusion about, certainly a limited series like this, that's really satisfying. You feel like you've just explored, a really like full arc. Whereas I don't always feel that with film. I will say that TV schedules are intense. You move at a quicker pace. Generally the hours are longer. And, I guess I'm more versed in film. So I'm kind of one of those people that likes to mess up a few times. Sometimes in TV, there's less of an opportunity to do that. Particularly if you're doing kind of like the lower budget TV stuff. I wouldn't put Dopesick in that category, but, lower budget TV, there's less opportunity for misses. They're looking for a few more hits than maybe I'm naturally capable of. But yeah, man, to be honest, though, medium's never really kind of dictated the choices I've made. And it's nearly always been kind of just based in material and the creatives involved. And, in Dopesick, I was lucky on both counts, The material was incredible, and the cast was stellar. Like maybe one of the best ensemble casts I'll ever be a part of. So,
Dopesick out October 13th on Hulu. While we have you, got to ask you a couple things about some other stuff as well.
sure.
Genius movie that you were in. Genius movie, Midsummer. Which it's one that I still don't believe exists.
Get a A24 hat, respect.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, if you didn't believe we liked it, yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Had to prove it, yeah.
It's just so terrifying in a way that it makes sense. It's not the only reason it's terrifying, but the fact the lights are like you're just in the daylight. It's a horror movie in daylight. And it's just one of those it's such a simple thing. You're like, well, you don't see that very often. For you, though, you were in the movie. We're idiots. We don't know what the hell we're talking about. For you, what is it for you, though, that makes that story so terrifying, and what he was able to do, Ari Aster, to make it so just different than everything else?
Yeah, I mean, Ari is wild, man. He really is like a one of one. And I don't think he has any interest of doing anything that feels comfortable to him. You know, I think he's one of those people that like truly thrives in, you know, a place of discomfort. He wants to operate outside of his comfort zone because I think he genuinely believes that gives rise to like his best work. You know, and Hereditary is such an interesting, you know, first film in the sense that, you know, mostly shot, you know, on one location. A lot of it was nights. I want to say, crudely speaking, like 70% of it, you know, all centered around kind of like one family. And then you take Midsummer and it's like 70%. It's a subversion, right? 70% day and maybe 30% night. And he's nearly all exteriors, you know, so he's totally taken himself out of that, you know, where he previously had success, and he's purposely pushed himself to meet the challenge of creating a film that is equally as scary but in daylight, which is nuts because obviously, you know, within the horror genre, a lot of the tropes are tied up in what happens at night and, you know, what doesn't go down in the day. So it's really impressive that he did that. And yeah, I was really lucky to be a part of it. The interesting thing for me is like, I was playing a character who was constantly kind of like just dismantling everything around him with humor and never even really smart enough to clock on to the horror and when he was in jeopardy. So I never really engaged in what was scary. So to me, I kind of walked around Midsummer like it wasn't that scary, but you know, watching the film, I mean, that it's terrifying. And I totally get why people are creeped out. I brought we didn't have a premiere, but I brought my family to see it in London. And I'll never forget their faces coming out of the cinema. I mean, like they were like, "What the hell were you just in?" You know, it's a wild movie, and I was very grateful that Ari made me a part of it. You know,
I like that you call him one of one because I feel like that's how we feel about him as well. Like he's just he's so apart from the pack, and like I think the one commonality beyond the subversion, like you were talking about with both Midsummer and Hereditary, is like he's very good at tackling grief. Just as a broad subject in both of those movies, that's just a universal subject that everyone can understand. And he's just so brilliant at that, I think, so specifically. But what do you think just sets him apart versus what makes him one of one, so to speak?
It's a good question. Yeah, because he really is. You know, I've never really come across a director who has such a deep, like psychoanalytical understanding of all of his characters. And that is extraordinary. Like it's his writing is so rich for it. There is no word on the page that isn't there for a reason. And like he likes a bit of improv and we'll throw that in there, but he's thought about every syllable. And like I'm not just paying lip service, like he really has. And he can give you like the psychological, like the therapist, you know, breakdown of why that person has said that thing and why they are the way they are in every moment. And he's so exact about virtually everything. I mean, his blocking and his placement of actors in scenes and, you know, the just minute like details that he pays attention to. I think all of those things contribute to making him, you know, the one of one that he is. And also like, he's just got a sick sense of humor as well. I mean, the dude has just got like the wildest, maddest, you know, brain in the best way. And there's just no one like him, man. There's no one like Ari Aster.
I feel like whenever I say I like that movie, and then I catch like the one or two people who will be like, "What? Like that was so fucked up." I feel like if he was in earshot of that, he'd be like, "Yes,
yeah, yeah." That's what he's going for, man. He's absolutely going for that. Yeah.
Like a disruptor. Actually, and now that I'm thinking about what you said earlier, you joked about being starstruck with Michael Keaton, and I have to bring up the fact that you also starred in a movie with a director who just won Best Director. Leo Hardy, all that, and that was at this point. First of all, saying The Revenant was a while ago is kind of crazy, but it was like we're probably almost nearing. It's got to be close to 8 years, 10 years at this point.
Yeah, man, yeah. That was wild. I mean, like one of the weirdest moments for me was like me and Michael kind of sharing stories about working for Alejandro. That was like a really weird, thing. He'd just obviously done Birdman.
I didn't even think about that. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, he'd done Birdman, and then actually kind of midway through the kind of rehearsal process on Revenant, which was quite long. Alejandro showed us a cut of Birdman in order to like give us an idea of kind of what we were heading for, in terms of understanding the long flowing shots and the stitches and the clever way in which it was all kind of edited together. We watched Birdman, we're just kind of like blown away. I think we watched like a slightly unfinished version where like some of the VFX wasn't quite done or some of the music was still being tampered with. But like, it was just one of the most amazing things to kind of start the journey with. Alejandro is not an easy man to please. He's got an incredibly high standard and he demands a lot from people. But one of the most interesting, talented dudes I've ever met, and phenomenal director, and was nothing but wonderful to me.
A lot of people out there, it's a rising movement. A lot of people say if it wasn't for you, Leo would have never won his first Oscar.
Oh my gosh, I don't know who those people are. They're probably all Poulter is probably their last name. It's probably my family running that campaign.
We saw them after Midsummer. They came up to us and told us.
Yeah. Yes.
That's so funny. I hadn't heard that, but I'm delighted for Leo. That's like such a professional dude, such an incredible actor, and yeah, again, someone who's like was really really great to me when I was on set as kind of the rookie in that scenario. So yeah, got nothing but good things to say about that dude.
All right, I have a hypothetical to give you. Just speaking of Oscar talk in general.
Okay,
you can either win the Oscar for Best Actor, or Arsenal becomes the EPL champions for 3 years in a row.
Oh, I'm taking Arsenal, man. I'm taking
Arsenal 3 years in a row.
I mean, listen, the joy I felt when we beat Tottenham last weekend was just ecstasy. And Arsenal have put me through. I love them, can't quit them. They put me through a lot of pain in the last 10 years. But like, oh my gosh, if we could run the league for the next 3 years, I would be so happy. And
we have a super fan here, Troops, who does a lot of Arsenal TV. And
yes, of course.
We work with Troops, yeah. And he has our other coworker, Za. They do watch parties on YouTube. I'm sure you've seen and it is, but he was in the office now and then. He'll fly back over, and it is when Arsenal plays this place, you know it. You can hear it.
It is loud.
I bet. I love Troops. Every Arsenal fan knows who Troops is, and there was that thing of like sad to see him go, but also like very proud of him that he was like going, stateside and starting up there. So love to Troops.
He just got engaged yesterday, which is wild. Yeah. This guy's living his life.
Oh, he's living his best life. Good for him.
If you're ever in New York and he's here in an Arsenal game, you may need to swing through for a while. It is madness.
I might have to. I might have to hit him up. I would love that.
He did kick a bucket of beers, not at someone, but near someone once. Oh, yeah. It's chaos. He's the best.
Oh really? All right. Yeah. Well, yeah. He likes to react when Arsenal score. I've seen some footage.
One other thing before we let you go here. You and I have something in common. I don't know if it's your favorite, but I saw this like 3 or 4 years ago. And I don't, you're not in New York right now, right?
No, I'm headed there, but not right now.
So then you can get something that I actually had yesterday, and that's a milk bar pie. Which I know you are. I know it might have been like a GQ thing. I remember watching, and you talked about all these things you liked, but the way you talked about that, and I had been a fan of it back then too. It used to be called crack pie. It's like,
yes,
it is the best thing ever.
It's the greatest mistake to ever happen in the culinary world. Like, Christina Tosi's a genius, and the fact she made that and it's available to eat probably shouldn't be legal. It's so good, wildly addictive and delicious, and I love it. And actually, I'm going to New York, and I'm gonna have to have some. I can't go to New York and not have some. So I'm going in a couple of days, and I'm gonna have to eat some.
I had one yesterday, and I've been eating better lately, and I was like, I should have had two. What am I doing? Why not just?
Yeah, it's a go hard or go home. And me too. I've been trying to eat better, but there's nothing that will hold me back once I sniff it.
Before you go, 6 movies. So not that we interview old people, but you are around our age. I'm 30. Ken Jack just turned 28. Right. You are as well, right? Yeah, we don't typically get to ask this question to somebody our age.
Right.
6 favorite movies. It could be guilty pleasures, most rewatchable. Just 6 of your favorite movies.
Flipping heck! I wish I'd prepared.
It's a loaded question.
Hook is in there for nostalgia, like an R.I.P. Robin Williams, one of the greatest ever. On that tip, Good Will Hunting is in there. There's a film called Victoria, which I absolutely love. It's a one-shot film, which is kind of my slightly it's going to sound like a pretentious pick, but it is genuinely unbelievable. There's a film called Girl by Lucas Dont, which is about a ballet dancer who's managing their transition. And it's a Belgian film, and it's outrageously good. Okay. Oh my gosh. The Godfather. Just Marlon Brando's performance just kind of blows my mind, and I can't get over how good he is. And Parasite, Bong Joon-ho, unbelievable director. And yeah, just love the dude.
Modern.
I tell you, I saw Parasite in August of 2019, and I said right then and there, I'm like, this is gonna be the best movie of the year. Absolutely best movie of the year. No, hands down. That was the best prediction I ever made, because I ended up winning the Oscar obviously later on. And man, it was so good.
Dude, that movie's outrageous, and that man is so talented. It's incredible, that film.
Just hit after hit. I don't understand it. It's just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. It's outrageous. I don't know how
you can be so good at something like that. It's crazy. But hey, this was an absolute blast. If you're ever in New York, swing by. You have an Arsenal fan base here. But Dopesick, Hulu, October 13th. This was a blast. I'll talk to you again.
Thank you, fellas. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you.
All the best. You too, fellas.